Hello everybody and welcome back to the second shelf and to one of the most unusual videos, at least if you are following my channels, because this is a TBR video and I never make those except for Victober and sometimes also for nonfiction November. And those two read-alongs, readathons are also the only readathons that I really participate in with, TBR and trying to fulfill the prompts and everything. So yes, and I know it's only the middle of September. What is it today? The 13th or 14th or something? 13th. Yes, and it's, as you can see from the blouse, we're still in the middle of this, September heat wave. But I don't care. Announcement videos have been published from the host of Victober, and it's fall if you look at the calendar. So I made my TBR. Anyway, if you're not familiar with Victober, it's an event that happens every October, hence Victober, in which we are encouraged to read Victorian literature. That's basically it. If you want to participate in Victober, you have to read one work of Victorian literature. But there are a couple of hosts and there are prompts and there are challenges and there's a group read. So you can participate more, but the only thing you absolutely have to do in order to participate is read one Victorian work. Can be fiction, can be nonfiction, can be poetry, doesn't matter. The announcement videos, I will leave links down below to all the announcement videos, and the event is hosted as always by Katie from Books and Things, from Kate, and her channel is called Kate How Reads, Marissa from Blatantly Bookish, and I'm just looking down to get the channel names right, Petra from Books with Petra, not Petra with Books, Books with Petra, and Ross, of course, from Scallydandling about the book. So the links to these announcement videos are all down below, where everything is explained in more detail if you are not familiar with it or want to have more information. There will be a group read, The Way We Live Now by Anthony Trollope. There is a Discord a group, and there's always also a Goodreads group, but I understood that the host this year will be most active on Discord. So check that out if you want to participate. And then each year, each of the hosts comes up with one challenge. So this year it's Katie says, read a piece of Victorian new woman fiction, which was really interesting to me because I'm not familiar with that concept. New woman was, I learned, a pre-feminist movement, so to speak, in the end, towards the end of the 19th century. And it promotes the new woman, which is an independent woman, also often earning money or having a career of sorts, which was quite unheard of for women of a certain class. I mean, women like us always had to work because we don't have any money, so we need to earn money, but you know what I mean. So Katie's challenge is read a piece of Victorian new woman fiction. Then Kate's challenge is read a Victorian work with a stranger or outsider. Marissa says read a Victorian work by a new to you author. Petra's challenge is read a Victorian first-person narrative, and Ross's challenge is read a Victorian work where class features strongly. So I picked 5 books, one for each challenge, but I will, in the show notes down below, you will also see that most of, I think all of the books, also qualify for one of the other challenges. So if you're interested in one of the books that I picked, but maybe not for the challenge I picked it for, you can have a look for whether the other challenge fits or suits you better. Anyway, and I don't have any of the books yet, so I will, except for one, but to keep it simple, I will just put pictures up of the cover up here for each book. So let's get started with the first challenge, which is Katie's challenge, read a piece of Victorian New Woman fiction. And for this, I picked Amy Dilwyn, Jill, published in 1884. I have never read this author, so it qualifies for me also for the new author. But it was recommended by Katie in her video for the New Women prompt. And I've hardly ever read. This is an author from Wales, so that's also not something that I've often read, because of course Victorian literature is, England, which also the rest of Great Britain, as we call it now, with Wales and everything, and of course Ireland. So Jill is a book about an aristocratic woman who leaves her home. She escapes, she flees after her mother dies, and she goes to London, and she pretends to be a lady's maid and gets employment. And then there is, as far as I understood, kind of a lesbian twist to the story. I mean, her love for her lady is obviously, as far as I can see, not answered. So there is probably, would have probably been too much for the Victorians to have a really a lesbian relationship in a book. But it's certainly exploring that topic, and also, of course, a woman who is trying to make her own way and earn money and work as a lady's maid. So I thought that sounded fascinating. I will say that Katie said that also in her video. Some of the books are quite hard to get, so I'm still trying to get a physical copy of the book, but so far with no luck. But it is on script, so if I can't get a physical copy, I will read it on script. And it might even be a buddy read with Joe Smith. We haven't decided yet exactly, but that would be fantastic as well. And the second one is Kate's challenge, read a Victorian work with a stranger outsider. And for that, I chose also a book that Kate recommended, and it's poetry. It's a short, it's a long poem, but it's a short book, under 100 pages. Christina Rossetti, Goblin Market, and this book was published in 1862. I just said in a previous video, when the recent reads that I uploaded on Sunday, talking about Le Guin's poetry, and that I don't read that much poetry. So this is another way for the Victober Readathon to also include a piece of poetry. And because Kate recommended it, and she spoke with such enthusiasm about this book, that I immediately thought this is going to be the book for this challenge. It's about the poem is about two women, and they both get seduced by lewd men. And so it's, of course, Victorians, they are moralistic. You just have to roll with it. But the fact that this is a poem, and it's also, by the way, an author that I'm not familiar with, so it also fulfills that challenge. And it just sounded wonderful when Kate talked about it. If you watch the announcement videos of the 5 hosts, you will see what I mean when you watch Kate's video. The next challenge is Marissa's, read a Victorian work by a new to you author. So I already have 2 on the list, but I chose specifically for this challenge, I chose Mrs. Oliphant Hester, published in 1883. This probably also qualifies for the New Woman, and some of the other challenges, but I read it because I have never read Mrs. Oliphant, and it's on the 1001 list, my list of 1001 books by women that I want to read before I die. Mrs. Oliphant, Margaret Oliphant, but she wrote under the pen name. I mean, she called herself Mrs. Oliphant. And this book, Hester, appealed to me because it's on the 1001 list, yes, but also because of the topic. There is a female main protagonist, an older protagonist, Catherine, I think is her name, and she is the head of a bank. I mean, who would have thought that that is even possible? And then there is the conflict with Hester. She is a relative of this high-profile, successful woman, and another younger man whom she considers a son, more or less. And I understood that's, of course, the conflict between the old and the new. But I picked the book because of the premise that you have a female character in a Victorian novel that runs a bank. I mean, I thought that was fantastic. Then the next challenge is Petra, read a Victorian first narrative, a first-person narrative. And some of the other books that I picked also qualify for this challenge, so have a look. But I want to reread one of my favorite Bronte books, and that is Anne Bronte, who is so undervalued, I feel. And that's The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, published in 1848. And I just love that story. It's told by a person. I don't want to spoil it for you. If you have never read it, that I don't know, maybe you have, but anyway. So Gilbert Markham is our narrator. He tells us the story, and he is quite taken by a new acquaintance, Helen, the tenant of Wildfell Hall. She just moved in with her young son, and he befriends her, and they get along really well. There's not a romantic story yet, but then rumors begin to spread about her, and that she might be married, and she might have affairs, and it's all very strange, and it will be revealed in the course of the book about her past, what happened, and about, why she moved to Wildfell Hall. I'm not going to say any more than that, but I thought it's one of the most unconventional stories because it talks about subjects like an abusive marriage in a Victorian context, and I find that fascinating. And like I said, it's one of my favorite Bronte books, and I want to reread it, and I will reread it, or at least I want to reread it for this prompt. I'm not sure whether I can manage all 5, by the way, in October. Anyway, the last challenge is number 5 by Ross came up with that challenge. Read a Victorian work where class features strongly. And I think there are a lot of books that, if you read Gaskell, North and South, books like that, they feature class strongly. But I picked Dina Maria Mulock-Craig, John Halifax, Gentleman, published in 1856. I read Craig's book, A Noble Life, last year for Victober, and I liked it, but it was also a horrible edition, and the print was awful, and the paper was awful, and that always influences my enjoyment or non-enjoyment of a book. But I thought she sounded like an interesting author, so I want to read another book by her. And this book is probably also, I think, if I remember correctly, is also on the 1001 list. And it is about John Halifax, by the way, told in the first person, so it also qualifies for that prompt, who, as a young child, an orphan, gets an apprenticeship and the son of his master tells us the story, and it tells us his John Halifax's success from an orphan, David Copperfield-like, poor, no prospect of a future, and then his rise into society, thanks to the Industrial Revolution and the fact that people from a non-aristocratic background can rise up into the middle class. The middle class was something new at that time in Victorian age. So that sounded interesting. Ross said that it is a bit finger-waggingly moralistic. I'm prepared for that. I'm not surprised because Noble Life was also like that. But yeah, I thought it sounded really interesting, and I want to read another book by this author. So anyway, so these are my picks for the Victober. I'm interested. I know it's early, but maybe you have thought about Victober. Watch some of the announcement videos. Are you participating? I want to know all the things, and I'm very much looking forward to this. One of the 2 readathons that I actually try to participate in fully. Looking forward to all your comments, of course, as well. And I'll talk to you soon in the next one.